Hello, everyone. This is Pulp Christian. I'm Dave.
I'm Tyler.
This is the podcast where we take your questions about Christianity and try to answer them.
Yeah, definitely going to try.
Mm-hmm.
So today we have a special episode. It's, I don't know if we want to call it the gay episode or
Easy.
What do you want to call it? We have a special guest. Tyler, it's me. I'm just kidding. It's Paul Joy.
Hello.
So this is Paul. He is, do you want to introduce yourself or do you want one of us to introduce you?
I want to hear what you have to say.
Okay. So we've gotten some questions regarding homosexuality because I've shared a little bit of my testimony before on this podcast. And someone who I used to go to church with, Tyler, still goes to church with, Paul Joy. You have submitted some questions, and I would say that me and you have very similar backgrounds or kind of similar. Would you agree with that?
Yes and no, yeah.
Okay, so, well, here, what I mean is, so we're both Christians, and we both are gay or same-sex attracted, or how do you say it?
We'll get into that.
We have experience being not straight.
Right, okay.
That's safe. But
And
Paul's done a lot of, he's actually been pretty, this is not the good word to use maybe in this context, but outspoken on, you've actually done conferences, or at least been a part of a conference in which you had the podium and you were responsible to share about Christians and homosexuality and blogged about it and been a voice for the church that we attend that a lot of people have looked to. So is that all of your credentials or what am I leaving out?
Yeah, experience growing up gay in the church and trying to navigate that tension between faith and sexuality. That's usually what I say. So,
okay, so give us like a brief story. Like, you were raised in the church your whole life, and at what point did you realize that you
decided to be gay?
That you decided to be gay. When did you choose to become an affront to God?
Yes, I grew up, I should not have been gay by the church's definition. For sure, I was the token, good church kid. So, was born into the church. My parents helped start a church in Des Moines. And I think there wasn't a point necessarily at which I thought, I knew, like, now I'm gay. It was more like kind of a slow realization that I wasn't fitting the mold of kind of the, purity culture, wait for marriage so you can have a wife and 2.5 kids and a white picket fence. So it was like, I don't really like girls. But eventually I started to realize, guys are really interesting and good looking. And so, once, puberty hit and high school happened, then it was like, well, I know my experience is way different than everybody else in the youth group that I attended. And, I know I'm supposed to wait for marriage. I know that, God has a smoking hot wife for me, someday, that'll be the thing. But as time went on and that those feelings didn't happen, it was kind of more of a realization of, no, this isn't a phase, because at least for me at the time, I couldn't put gay and Christian in the same sentence, so that I had no context for being gay or for, same-sex attracted or whatever label you use. And so it was either like, I'm gay and I'm not a Christian, or I'm a Christian and this whatever I'm feeling just isn't legit, like I'm going to get out of it eventually.
Interesting. That sounds really like a awful place to be in.
Yeah. And I did my darndest. I remember, 40 days is kind of a magical number for some in the Bible that you see referenced. And I remember at one point in high school, like literally praying for 40 days that like God would change me or change something about my experience. And back then, I wouldn't have imagined, having any sort of conversation about it, because that's not something you talked about in the church. That was just it's kind of like a don't ask, don't tell type of thing. We knew that it was wrong. That's about all we knew. And I don't know if it was necessarily because the people around me were, mean or antagonistic. It was just they didn't know gay people, and their only context was the Bible says this, or this is what we think the Bible says, and so that's the end of it.
So you were just kind of hoping at some point it would just go away.
Oh, absolutely, for sure. Yeah, because like I said, I didn't know anybody in the church like me. I read a few books and articles that I could get my hands on, but it was like, this is just bad, and I don't know how I'm going to get out of it, because like I said, you can either be Christian and you can't be gay, or be gay and not a Christian. So I did think it would go away eventually. I don't think that anymore.
Pray the gay
at
away.
The time. Yeah, that was. So
did you ever do anything like conversion therapy, or did you ever go to a quote unquote professional to try to change yourself?
No, not formally. No. I do think though that my experience was heavily influenced by conversion therapy mindset of it is possible to change your orientation, and in fact that's probably the ideal. If you want to be a good Christian, you should probably do that. I remember going to a conference with some other Christians at one point, Focus on the Family conference. I think it was called Love Went Out. I think it was. It's not around anymore.
Oh no, I've never heard of that.
Yeah, and I think that was helpful, at least to see some like terminology being used. But again, like the stories that were shared and the like kind of the examples that were held up were like, oh, like this person was gay and now they have a wife and kids, and that can happen to you too. And at the time, Exodus International was a big organization, an ex-gay ministry, and so while the Christians around me weren't necessarily mean about it, whether in their implied philosophy or just in their silence, what I took away from was, this is a phase, and if it's not, you should work on changing. That's that was what I took away.
Yeah, it's tough, especially in our church, when a lot of believers have been Christians for like a year or less, in a lot of cases, like not you, but a lot of the people you would have known and that I knew and I was and stuff. And being friends with Dave, like I kind of thought some of those same things, both due to being around people who thought those things, but also just being a new believer and not having sort of time and the ability to develop convictions correctly with the Bible over the course of time, just being young and stupid. But yeah.
Now I will say the first person I came out to was in our church, and it was a mostly positive experience. He was wise enough to not try to give me too much theology right up front. I remember the main thing I remember him saying was, I don't know much about this, but we'll figure it out together.
Yeah.
That was what he said. And
that's cool.
So I will say, as much beef as I often have with the church, I did come out in the church for the first time, and that was a mostly positive experience. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
So, so you say that you're gay. So just, are you dating a guy, or are you basically what? And then
what does my experience being gay look like?
Yeah,
now?
like people may not know that you are. Yeah.
So I guess so just to be clear, with where you stand on the issue, you believe that homosexuality is a sin, right?
I believe that same-sex romantic and sexual behavior is not in God's original intent, and that his design for marriage is between a man and a woman. And I had to go through the process myself of deciding, okay, do I really believe the Bible says this? Do I believe that God has my best interest in mind, regarding sexuality? And so where I have come down on is, I can't read the Bible any other way other than that. It seems like God's original plan for marriage was heterosexual.
Sorry, I just wanted to get that out.
I think that's a really good idea, actually. So one of the questions, I'll skip to the second question we had because it's tied into what we're talking about, but Mara Weatherford, she wanted to know, what is your guys' take on the disagreements within Christendom over whether to use the term gay or not versus like same-sex attracted versus any other, ex-gay or whatever. So some Christians believe to call yourself gay, this is actually not her question, this is me riffing off of it. Mm-hmm. Some Christians believe to call yourself gay is to not believe God can fully redeem your sexuality, which we were kind of talking about beforehand. So, what do you guys think about that?
One thing I've noticed is that it seems like the people who are most concerned with this question are straight white males. I'll just throw that out there. That's not an answer to the question, but that's what I'll say. That's a frustration I have. And Dave can respond to this too, but so labels. What's the big deal with labels? So
yeah,
I feel like I've kind of evolved on this. It's not the most important thing to me anymore what the terms people use. So there's going to be baggage in whatever terminology you choose to use. So
sure.
I think ex-gay is probably one of the worst ones you could use because in the vast majority of experiences, it's not actually true, that you went from really exclusively liking one sex to exclusively liking the other sex. That just is not a thing. Now, I wouldn't deny someone's experience or testimony if that happened, fine. But I think in the vast majority of cases, that is not a thing. So to me, that seems a little bit disingenuous to use that term. It's also associated with kind of the sordid history of kind of the conversion therapy and Exodus International, different, where they place way too much emphasis on you to please God as a Christian, you must become straight, so
short for Exodus gay.
Yes.
Just kidding.
Exodus, the gay lifestyle, and and so but at the same time, as a Christian, I think that is the most important thing about me. So I wouldn't necessarily lead with, I'm gay. This is like the most important thing about me. It's certainly a significant part, and I think we should be sensitive to how people have experienced their sexuality. But the most important thing about me is I'm a child of God. I am a friend and brother and so many other things besides just my sexuality. But the fact of the matter is that gay describes my feelings and my attractions. And so I think trying to work around that in your language kind of can be clunky, can be disingenuous. I know that there's arguments on the other side, but that's kind of where I've landed at this point, is that I'm okay with using the word gay, but like I said, I'm not like dating, having sex all over the place. That's we talked about what I'm
like gay and celibate or something. Would that be fair?
Yes.
What do you think, Dave?
Yeah. So before I was a Christian, I was a bit of a hoe, and
you nasty.
I mean, let's be real. So for me, when I was like, I'm gay, that's what that meant. It was like, yeah, I'm gay. Like as gay as you can be. And then when
minus the voice.
Yeah, I never had the gay voice.
Depends on the day.
Right. But I think for me, so I get saved, and then I sort of realized, now when I got saved, I really wasn't focused on the fact that I was gay. That wasn't a big deal to me. But what I noticed was, so like, before I was a Christian, I basically would put most people in a category of how attractive are they, and would I have sex with this person? Not like actually like, am I going to, but like, where on the scale of how much I would or would not want to have sex with this person.
It's like a normal male view outlook, I think, for it, no matter what your sexuality is.
But that's kind of how I thought.
Yeah.
I thought about sex all the time. That's just kind of, I don't know, I guess one of my hobbies, maybe you could say. But I noticed that like my thinking very quickly changed. So like I don't really sexualize everyone anymore. Like I just don't think that way. My desire to have sex sort of just went away. I don't really like all my desires to like pursue a relationship with a dude or anything like that. I just do not. I'm not interested in that.
What about attraction?
So so I still find, I mean, if they're attractive, I find them attractive. But
Right.
but to say
Just,
it goes
yeah,
for
just
women.
because I'm attracted to men doesn't mean I'm attracted necessarily to every man that I happen to walk by. It's like,
Don't flatter yourself.
yeah, right.
Yeah. So, yeah, like I still will notice an attractive guy, but I guess the difference is I don't immediately start thinking about what would it be like to date him or what would it be like you just start going down this road of like, you know, planning our wedding as he just jogs by.
Right.
Now, I know that not everyone is like that. Not everyone has that experience.
I think the nuance is important though, because it seems like your priorities of affection changed. It wasn't like you became straight. So correct me if I'm wrong. It's not like you're noticing hot women all over the place now.
No, but I do want to point out. So before I was a Christian, so I've always found women attractive. I just did not really have a desire to be in a relationship with a woman. I mean, I would have had, if I was in the right situation, I would have probably had sex with a woman. But like, it was my desire to be in a relationship with a woman just wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's still kind of the case. So like, I find men and women attractive. So maybe that puts me more in a bisexual. Who cares? But
Right.
But no, to answer your question, no. I'm not now a heterosexual, normal, quote unquote, normal guy or whatever.
See, I think maybe if some of those ex-gay folks would have been a little more nuanced in the way they presented it,
Yeah.
like if they presented it more like you just said, as opposed to come to Jesus and be straight,
Yeah.
I think there's
Because
some...
I don't even agree with that.
No, and so that certainly is a turnoff for anybody who's wrestling with how to reconcile their feelings with their faith. You know?
Yeah. And I think like, so we were talking about people who we know who have the opinion that you're not giving God like enough credit to really transform your life. For me, I think that argument is not taking into account things like every other sin that like you yourself have that you had before you became a Christian and you still deal with. Whether you want to call same-sex attraction in and of itself divorced from like acting on it, whether you want to call that a sin or not, like I'm not here to say that or decide that, but like,
and I think it's a waste of time.
Yeah,
honestly.
but like what I mean is if I am a kleptomaniac and I go to the store after I become a Christian and have the desire to steal but don't act on it, like nobody is going to tell me you are not a regenerated like new person. It's like, you know, why do we have accountability groups and partners if like we are just now perfect? You know, it's like, it's so stupid to think that way for me, because yeah, even if you do say that homosexuality, the desire, like let's say you say that it somehow is a choice or it is just sin or whatever. If that's your stance, like even that doesn't hold up as far as Christians who their life totally transforms and they still struggle with all the same stuff they struggled with before by and large. It's just, you know, relying on the Lord to change them, or in some cases just change their decisions in spite of those desires.
Yeah, I would, you know, if a straight Christian thinks that me truly being a Christian means I wouldn't be gay anymore, I would just say, how does that line up with your experience of any sort of desire or temptation that might come into conflict with God's word? You know,
Yeah.
I mean, do you experience purity of thought 100% of your day? Or, you know, it's like, it doesn't mean we don't strive for sanctification and Christ likeness. I mean, I agree with all that, but I think it discourages real transformation and real relationship and opportunity for connection when you have that expectations that maybe aren't even biblical.
Yeah, it reminds me of that verse where Jesus says, like, you put burdens on others that you yourself can't even bear, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
And it makes people feel like, why am I not different? Why am I not, like, totally transformed when the person yelling at them isn't either, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But
So I suppose I've never called myself ex-gay,
Mm-hmm.
because I think that sounds weird, and that's not.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't sound very honest, really.
Mm.
But what I was saying is because. So, for instance, I don't view myself as gay.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I think of myself, I just don't think of myself as a gay person. Now, no one told me to think that way. That's just sort of how I think now. And when I've talked to people about before I was a Christian, what I say is like, I used to be gay. And the reason I say that is because my behavior is different now. And because before I was a Christian, me being gay meant I have sex with dudes.
Mm-hmm.
That's what that meant to me when I said that.
And for me, being gay just means I'm attracted to dudes. That's
right. But I guess for me, I want to make I want to differentiate between what that meant before I was a Christian versus now, where it's like I used to be gay. I used to do that. I don't do that now. And of course, people always say, like, so are you straight now? And then I'm like, no. And then I have to have a conversation. But for me personally, the reason why I don't say that I'm gay is because of that. Because basically, I don't think of myself like that anymore.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know as I necessarily think of myself that way. At least for me, and again, I haven't had the same experience as you as far as, being promiscuous or, being out in the world a lot, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
For me, it feels the best for quick commonality of language, quick commonality of people know what that means, or at least, what a lot of people think it means. So I guess, same-sex attracted could maybe force the conversation sooner of, okay, what do you mean by that? Because you're right.
It's a little clunkier.
Yes.
To say that.
It sounds like you have a disease right off the bat,
Right.
Like
it's got the SSA.
Diagnosed with SSA, So yes, so it seems like, and I there's, again, labels is not the hill I'm willing to die on, but it seems like maybe your past experience might have a lot to do with whether you decide to adopt the label now. For you, that being gay means this, and you don't associate with that anymore. And so, no, when I say I'm gay, it doesn't mean that I'm running around having sex all over the place. It doesn't mean, that necessarily that I'm affirming, and it just means that I happen to be attracted to men, but my faith now dictates that I am single and celibate. That's how I live it out. It's a lot, right? It's like it kind of sucks that I
need a new acronym.
There's so much,
So I have a question.
Yeah.
So the way you just said that, you said your faith dictates that you're single and celibate.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like you're missing out on something?
Depends on the day. If I'm honest, when I am thinking clearly, and I think I have a firm grasp on my theology, no, I don't feel like I'm missing out. When I have days where I'm depressed or lonely or frustrated, for sure I can feel like, because in the church and outside of the church, there's so much emphasis placed on sexual expression and relationship intimacy and all this stuff. And I think we have a question later on related more to like kind of, so what does intimacy look like then? But like some days I do feel like I'm missing out. But I do believe this is what the Bible says to the best of my ability, and my experience and my church and everything I've read up to this point has more or less confirmed that's something I can fall back on. That's okay. This may be hard right now, but I have the confidence that like it's a choice that I made, believing it's right. if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah, but okay, so
But yes, sometimes.
Yeah.
It's not. Yeah. I mean, there's no. I'd be lying if I said it was never hard. If I
Right.
feel like, man, like maybe I don't really know what I'm missing out on, or what happens when it's not as when I get to be, in my 40s and 50s, and it's not as cool to be a swinging single anymore, and it's like,
Yeah.
and I'm just kind of that odd man out, and
I remember that feeling of like, it's unfair because why do I have to forfeit a potentially happy life for this crappy life that's occasionally not as crappy? That's how I felt. And
I'm laughing because I
yeah,
it's true.
right.
Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, for what it's worth, the feeling that you have of like, oh, if I could only have a husband or a boyfriend or a partner who would like, hold me or like be with me when I'm lonely or whatever. In my experience, this is just my experience, both people usually feel that way, and so neither one person is able to like emotionally fulfill another person. And so what it does is it starts this like, I mean, part of it's enjoyable. I mean, it is, sex is fun, and it's fun to have like a friend that you can have and stuff, but it's like once you try to get beyond that, it just doesn't seem to really be there. Now that I'm sure there are gay couples out there that have been married for 50 years and are, very happy or whatever, but in my experience, it just was not as fulfilling as I thought it was going to be because of how bad I felt when it was like off limits versus, okay, now go do whatever you want. And it's like, surely I'll be happy now, or I'll find it. And I just was not able to.
Well, yeah, I think that is across the board, whether you're gay or not. I think that's just a obsession and a hope that so many people have that this one person is going to satisfy their every need and desire, and that's the case in the world and in the church, and so I think what the church needs to do a better job of emphasizing is that nobody's going to find life that way through having sex or through having a romantic experience with that one single person, that soulmate. We've all created this idol of marriage and family that, we might whitewash it up a little bit, in the church and say, well, this is God's plan, but it seems like an arbitrary, vindictive thing to say to a gay person, you cannot be with the person you love, when we're all trying to put our eggs in that basket.
Yeah, exactly. I'll read this question from Hannah because it's right down this alley, and she says, as a single straight female Christian, I feel implied an overt pressure from well-intentioned people in the church to become a wife and mother. I've been told not to pursue things like a career or passion or ministry, not in order to honor Christ, but because I might get married. I guess wives and mothers are supposed to not have interests or passions outside the home. I've been told to put myself out there to get the attention of a potential spouse, which I do think detracts from figuring out how to practice loving all people without favoritism. While I do desire marriage, this sentiment is extremely unhelpful, and I believe idolizes marriage as some sort of ultimate godliness. In my experience, I think the church idolizes romantic relationships as much, if not more, than secular culture. I think this is why the church has, generally speaking, not ministered well to LGBTQ people. So my question is, for someone who has to forsake their sexual desires and even the possibility for marriage, where do you see the church's blind spots? What are the false expectations of what it means to follow Christ or live a godly life or even have a fulfilled life? And I think, to give you guys a second to think, my immediate reaction to this question was that I just Agreed wholeheartedly with it. It's shocking to hear that people have, being a man, like I've never, this is like outside of the scope of this episode, but telling a woman not to pursue things because she might get married, that's wild to me, and I've never heard that. Or to put yourself out there. But yeah, to the idolatry of marriage thing, like I feel like if you listen to the radio, like Christian radio stations, or you just sort of get a vibe from your Christian friends, it seems like the ultimate expression of what it means to be a mature Christian is, maybe it's be a missionary, or maybe it's be a pastor, but definitely for the average person, it's be a godly husband and father with like perfect family who all like love and obey Christ. And that is the ultimate expression of Christianity. It seems like what's communicated.
Mm-hmm. So I have a bad habit of, I know this is a podcast, but I'm nodding my head a lot. So you can't hear that, but I'm nodding my head a lot.
Yes.
Bobblehead over here.
I think part of the reason that is because it's an easy category. It's kind of easy to lump people in this and be like, here, do this. Mm-hmm. Just do this.
This is familiar for us. We know what we know the boxes to check off. It's easier for ministry if we can just clump all these people together.
Right. And I think that's why all the people that, don't fit into that category, the church historically has just sort of been like, well, just try to do that. And then with, gay people, it's like,
well, what the heck
get
are
out.
we to do? Yeah.
Get out of our church.
Yeah, like, what do I do to become a mature Christian? Well, first be straight, because that's the step one to get you to that like ultimate expression, which is marriage and discipling your children well.
Yeah, I'm not a church historian expert, but it seems like there's various points of church history, and say what you will about Catholicism, but there's a recognition of the single life as a calling and like a vocation and a good thing, and I think modern evangelicalism has lost that a lot, where they are either unfamiliar with or uncomfortable with the idea of a really fruitful single life, and so that's not to demean family and marriage at all. I mean, yeah, heck, we definitely need that, but it's impossible to see another option for some people, and I think one big I wrote down this is a big idea. I don't being single and celibate does not have to equate to like you're destined to a life of loneliness like that. That I truly believe if the church is done right and Christianity is done right, that you can find intimate, satisfying relationships there that will sustain you. And I say intimate, obviously I don't mean sexual, but just in the sense of being known and being accepted and belonging. I think if the church is really done right, you can find that there, and that gives a lot more plausibility to the gay person to accept a calling of celibacy, singleness, or even just a straight single person, for that matter. And I think the reason we get like sexuality is such an issue is that we really haven't maybe developed a full enough theology of what singleness and marriage is about.
Which I find that crazy, because I'll read this verse here, but there have always been gay people in the church. So in 1 Corinthians 6:9, don't you know that the unrighteous will not inherit God's kingdom? Do not be deceived. No sexually immoral people, idolaters, adulterers, or anyone practicing homosexuality, thieves, greedy people, drunkards, verbally abusive people, or swindlers will inherit God's kingdom. And some of you used to be like this. Huh?
I'm out.
Yeah. And some of you used to be like this, but you were washed, you were sanctified, and you were justified in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ and by the Spirit of our God. So clearly, even from the beginning, the church was made up of all different types of people that did not include straight married people.
Because you're saying it said practice homosexuality, implying that there was people who were gay but just not practicing?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Just trying to be clear.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's where some of you, and
Oh, right,
But-
right.
but-
That too.
yeah,
Right.
Okay, I missed that verse. I was too busy laughing about swindlers.
Swindlers.
what does that make you? A swindler?
Yeah, on Swindler's List.
Isn't that like a cheater or something?
Yeah.
Like a used
Yeah.
car salesman?
A grifter.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're right. The church does include people from all backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really easy to forget, I guess, that is the case.
Yeah, and I'd
Yeah.
never thought about that verse that way before. That's cool.
So let's say you're friends with a gay couple.
Mhm.
Let's say they're married even.
Mhm.
Would you invite them to church?
Yeah. Now they're probably going to ask, "Are you an affirming church?" To which I would say, if by affirming you mean, which most people, when they say affirming, they mean, does your church bless same-sex marriages? My church does not. I believe that. I currently believe that's the biblical stance.
Right.
But I also believe that the church is for everybody, and so yes, I would invite them. If that, I would make clear, where we're at, what
Right.
our stance is. So, because these days there's definitely a big push for just transparency in what you actually believe. So, like, whether it's on your church's website or your statement of faith, we all like to use the language of welcoming, because obviously who wants to be not welcoming?
Right.
But when we talk that way, we
Yeah.
obscure perhaps what our actual viewpoint is. And I think we owe it to people to at least be clear up front
Yeah.
with, okay, am I going to be allowed to be married here? Or am I going to be allowed to be a deacon or a pastor or whatever? It's like, you should know up front if that's going to be the
Yeah.
case,
And the reason I'm asking that is because, and I think we have a question that kind of asks this. So, let's say there's a straight couple, they're not married, and they have a couple kids, and they start coming to church. People might know, oh, they're not married, but I don't think people would mistreat them.
No.
I think they would be welcomed. I think they'd be invited to things as a couple. I think it would be recognized that they're in a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people would just pursue them with love and the gospel.
Yeah.
Now, a gay couple that's married, I don't think that would be the same reaction.
Yeah. He's referring to Megan's question. It says, can you talk about why homosexuality seems to be a trendy sin to go against? Other sins like gluttony, vanity are almost celebrated, and other sexual sins like divorce or premarital sex are tolerated. Did I stumble over that? Premarital sex are tolerated, but homosexuality remains a favorite to protest and go after. So yeah, 100%. What's the deal with Dave's exact question?
So it's hard because people would be like, well, it's a sin. And it's like, okay, sure. But so are these other people that are not Christians.
Yeah. Let me throw out a devil's advocate question real fast, just
Okay.
so that you guys can respond to it. So with this is actually a question my wife wanted me to ask, but it's kind of fits here anyway. So with the gay lifestyle, so like let's say
I hate
you
that
are
term, by the way.
really. So with the
I don't
same-sex
know what Dave thinks, but I
attracted-
hate that term.
okay,
Because
so
what is all the gay lifestyle? It's like, well, I go to work and I pick up groceries and I come home. Like what? Like
Yeah, but
just-
you do it.
you do it fabulously.
You do it gaily.
So anyways,
I try not. To
but
use
you know,
the-
like
yeah.
let's say you're walking in off the street and you are a single mom with a kid out of wedlock.
Okay.
You have the ability to say that was like a sin of my youth, and I have now like prettied myself up. I'm a good like religious person now, and I come to church and I'm like, as clean as a dove.
Mm-hmm.
If you are,
So you're a whitewashed tomb.
yes.
Okay.
So if you, I mean, yes, I do
Jesus
think
has some
that.
strong words about that.
Yeah. So, but if you're gay, this is again devil's advocate. Like if you're gay, it's like you're coming in as like somebody who agrees that lying is okay, or like, stealing is okay, and you're walking in the door saying, "What do you guys think about stealing?" Because I currently am a thief. I'm in the Italian job, and I really like
Okay.
it. You know what I mean? So, like, how would you differentiate that? Because and I'm not saying it's right to treat gay people differently than you would people who aren't married and walk into church, like your exact example.
Mm-hmm.
But as a counterpoint, like, they are living in a way that affirms a certain sin and not, sort of brushing it under the rug like most people who walk into church, saying like, like they lie and cheat and steal, but
Okay.
that was the old me, or whatever.
Well, yeah, but that would only be relevant if we were saved by works. So it doesn't actually matter what type of sin the person's involved with.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't even matter if they, up until you're saved, people like their sin.
Yes.
So, like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So even, little Miss Thang, who pretends to have it all together, versus, Adam and Steve, who aren't, like, it's irrelevant.
Yeah, I agree.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I
And
think that's a
so-
great response.
Yes. Yeah, you have various hurdles to get over. I mean, because one, it's like they might not. They first of all, they wouldn't necessarily even agree that what they're doing is a sin by your definition.
Right.
So then if you are going to a church where you do believe that same-sex behavior is a sin, then you at least have to acknowledge that. Well, and we believe these other things are a sin, and we believe the church is a place where you can come and encounter God and sort out all of said sin, so it wouldn't be fair to ostracize or treat differently a gay.
Yeah.
If you believe that they are living in sin the same as someone who's lying or cheating
Right.
or whatever, that would be hypocritical. When the person down the pew has been divorced or cheating on their taxes or whatever, fill in the blank,
Yeah.
And I recognize that even just to say that, to lump those two together is with sexuality is triggering for people even just to say that, but to be consistent theologically, like, yes, if you believe that's a sin, well, you should believe
Right.
that the church is a place where you can deal with that.
Yeah, for me, like when I got saved, some people say that they had this experience where they basically like almost enumerated their sins and sort of repented of them. But for me, it was and I know everybody's different. For me, it was an overwhelming feeling of I have been given life by God, to seek God, to obey Him, to honor Him, and I've spit in His face every day of my life. It was that sort of overwhelming sense. And so for me, yeah, like preaching a specific sin at somebody is not even helpful. It's
Right.
like your life is in totality a affront to God. To use the same word you did earlier, but I mean, like not just your sexual sin, but just like your heart. Your heart does not care about Jesus. He died for you. He made you from scratch. He invented your brain and your personality, and you could care less about Him. That is the issue. It's not just like your numerable specific sins as much as it is those, but it is more so your sin, like
Right.
nature and the thing. Your rebellion. That's what has to be primarily repented of.
Well, yeah, you're right. And the reason I was asking about the hypothetical gay couple is because,
And I really wish it wasn't hypothetical. I wish more gay couples would feel comfortable.
the problem is it's like, even if, because this for sure exists, there are gay couples out there that genuinely are interested in God.
Yeah.
Their only options are a gay affirming church, which if you go to a gay affirming church, they're not preaching the gospel.
Right.
That's just a fact. So it's either they go to some, crap church that isn't going to tell them anything useful, or it's a church that's like, okay, first you have to clean up your life before we will treat you like a person.
Mm-hmm.
Or quote unquote clean up your
And
life.
you're saying both extremes are wrong.
Yeah, they're both wrong. It's like,
I'm sorry for those of you who go to crap churches. I'm really sorry about that.
yeah, leave. If you're going to a crappy church, leave it. If they're not preaching the gospel, if they're super liberal, get out of there.
Yeah.
Waste
If you're
of
thinking to
time.
yourself, like, what do you mean by the gospel? Then get out of there.
Right.
Yes. I feel like I've lost my train of thought, but I think so. I know some. I think it's worth saying that, like, I think there is a sense in which sexual sin I mean, sexuality in general, but sexual sin is a bigger deal than other sin, in the sense that sexuality is something that is so deeply ingrained in a part of you
Yeah.
that so we're talking about comparing it to lying and cheating or whatever.
Right.
It's like, it's not to say that it isn't a big deal, because it is a big deal, and anybody who's been sexually wronged or mistreated could speak to this. It's a very deep, potentially painful thing. And so our sexuality deeply affects us. And I think, and it even says in 1 Corinthians, where it says all other sins a person commits is outside his body, but he who sins sexually sins against his own body. And so there is a sense that like sexuality and sexual sin have way greater potential for harm than other sins. And so in that sense, it is a big deal. When it is not, on the other side, it gets you to the same place as other sins of being separated from God and in need of a Savior.
Mm-hmm.
And so that doesn't put you further away from God's grace. It doesn't make you any less than another Christian. God still extends the same offer to you, by that theology.
100%.
So that if we're talking about why do we obsess over sexuality, or why is it the popular sin to condemn? It's like, well, there is a sense in like sexuality is a big deal inside the church or outside the church.
I think another reason why gay people are picked on is because for a long time in the world, but in the United States, society as a whole kind of just agreed that it was bad, that homosexuality is bad, and this is a deviant lifestyle and behavior, and these people are to be feared, and which I don't really think that's exactly right either.
No, you demonize what you're unfamiliar with.
Right, but it was sort of collectively acknowledged this is bad.
Right.
And then as society, as we got more liberal as a country and it became accepted, there's still probably the majority of people still kind of think that way.
Yeah, and
even
it polarizes people in much the same way that like Republicanism and Democrats like are polarized because the other side now like embraces the gays. We've got to even more stand our ground.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, that's the other thing too. It's not like lying is typically not as politicized as sexuality is. It's like you have all that going on about religious liberty and gay marriage and all that stuff out there. And so you can't help but feel polarized anyway. Yeah. And so that touches the church too. And so it's like, man, I wish it wasn't so.
It's interesting how with the elections, like there were people that were against, which I was not a fan of Pete Buttigieg, but there were people that were like, oh, he could never be president because he's gay and married and stuff. And it's like, okay, but look who the president is.
No crap.
It's asinine.
So that's the thing. So like, there's the wow, you were giving you merit all earlier. No, there's this political side of homosexuality and gay marriage and all that stuff too. So it's like, you're either forced to be super for it or super against it, and that touches the church too. Yeah. And so the church feels like they have to double down and be like, we're going to release a statement that outlines exactly what we think about homosexuals. Never mind the fact that we've barely, even acknowledged them over the past 100 years in the church. Yeah. And at best and at worst, we've, kicked them out when they came out. Right. It's like, okay, well, that, even if it's true, is super unhelpful right now. Yeah.
But you'll vote for a serial polygamist who's a liar, and
I'm not going to disagree with you.
Thinking of
I don't really want that to be the focus of this.
You're thinking of the parents on Spirited Away.
Okay.
At least we all agree
and that's the end of my Trump rant.
Well, I think that's going to do it. How do we close this?
So, okay.
Should we talk about the all right. Well, yeah, I think we had a lot of good conversation, and I know I learned something.
Yeah.
And
That's good.
I'm being facetious, but I did really appreciate it. And so anybody who ordered T-shirts, the cutoff date was the 22nd, so those should be in the mail or however you decided to order them. And then
Carrier pigeon.
what?
Carrier pigeon.
Yeah, carry your cross and your pigeon.
Yeah.
And so when you think about Instagram, think about us. Follow us. We're Pulp Christian Podcast. We got a Facebook group, same name. And what do you want?
PCP.
PCP. That's
Sounds like a denomination
yeah.
of a church.
What?
Maybe it is.
Do you want to sign us out this time, Paul? Pressure's on.
How dare you?
Okay, do it, Dave.
I was also going to add, we covered a bunch of different topics. If anyone listening...
We butchered a lot of different
yeah,
topics.
we butchered a lot of things, too. If anyone has anything to add, or maybe we didn't quite answer a question in a way that made sense to you, let us know on Facebook. We might potentially have Paul back for part 2, because this is a big topic. And
Yeah, so send in questions.
Yeah,
Yes.
send in your questions. And
I think we offended just about everybody.
yeah, which is good. That's a sign of a successful episode.
Mm-hmm.
So until next week, peace out.
Blessings.